Well, hello, and welcome to today's trauma-sensitive yoga practice. In today's practice, we are going to do a lot of poses that strengthen the core. Now, this will remain a well-rounded practice, so it's not going to be just the core that we are targeting, but a lot of these poses are going to affect the core, so we've called this core yoga. It is accessible and it is prenatal friendly. If you have a yoga block, that will be helpful for today's practice. A roll of toilet paper or a few books would also work, and I can give you modifications without a block if you don't have one. Also, for our seated positions and when we're on our knees, it's helpful to have a folded blanket. So let's begin by coming into a comfortable seat, one where our spine can be as straight as possible. We can begin to allow our eyes to close if you'd like. Shoulder blades can move down the back away from the ears. Lower belly can gently hug in toward the spine. Chin comes in slightly while you pull the crown of the head up and see if you don't get a little bit more length through the spine. And we'll begin to restrict the breath in and out the nostrils. Now, if you're congested or unable to, that is completely fine. But if it's comfortable, go ahead and breathe in and out through your nostrils. Allow the breath to be smooth and steady. On the exhale, see if you can make kind of a sound, ha sound, but with your mouth closed, like you're trying to fog up a mirror. Gently restricting the back of your throat. And breathing in the traditional Ujjayi yoga breath. And while you're taking these grounding and centering breaths, I encourage you to take a moment to remember why you practice yoga. What brought you to your yoga mat today? And just take a moment to connect with your reason for being here. Maybe it's to bring some calm, to maybe some anxiety. Maybe it's for stretching or strengthening the body. Maybe it's for overall well-being. Maybe you have a different reason. Just take a moment to remind yourself while you are here. You can continue to breathe smoothly in and out through your nose. I'll go ahead and play the singing bowl a few times. And you can turn your attention to the sound that it makes. Attention on the sound for as long as possible as it begins to become quiet. And then you can begin to make gentle circles with your shoulders, rolling them back. And then allowing them to roll forwards And placing your hand gently on the top of your head and bringing your head to the left if you've got your left hand on, or to the right if you started with your right hand. And just get a gentle stretch through the side of your neck. And we'll switch and stretch the other side. Don't go too deeply in this. Just feel a gentle sensation in the side of your neck. And continue to breathe. And bring your head back to neutral. And you can place your hands either on top of your head or interlace and place them behind your head, pushing your head back into your hands and bringing your elbows out. And then with the breath, we're going to inhale to grow tall and exhale to lean to one side. Inhale back to center and exhale to go to the other side. Try to stay tall even in this side stretch. We don't want to collapse through the side. Just stretch enough to get a little bit of a sensation of stretching through the side of your body. Begin to move the core here a little bit, as we will be focusing mainly on the core tonight while working the rest of our body. Continue to move with the breath. We'll do a couple more. Inhaling as we grow tall and exhaling to stretch to the side. And come back to neutral. Release your hands. You're going to bring the hands back behind you, and if you can interlace your hands behind your back. If not, you can just bring them back and bring them toward each other as far as they go. No big deal if you can't interlace. And then we'll bring the hands down and pull the chest forward, allowing the chin to be drawn up. Keep that lower belly hugging in. So this back bend is really in the upper back. We're a lot more flexible in the lower back, so we really want to stretch the upper back in these back bends. Good. And release. And we'll go ahead and twist to one side. So we'll take the left hand, place it on the right knee, take the right hand, place it behind you, and gently stretch to the right while pressing through both sitting bones. Especially if you're pregnant, make sure to keep this twist gentle, not too deep. And as we keep both sitting bones grounded, it allows that stretch to really move into the upper back, this twist. And then come back to center. We'll place the right hand on the left knee, left hand straight behind you, and gently twist to the left. Keeping that length through the spine even as we twist. Growing tall on the inhale and softening into the twist on the exhale. Good. And we'll come back to center, and we're going to move into a variation of cat-cow. If you've got a folded blanket, you can open it and place your knees on the blanket, and then put your hips over your knees, and your shoulders are going to start over your wrists. But then if you'd like, you can replace your wrists with your elbow. So bringing the forearms down to the ground, placing the hands straight out in front, and pressing all 10 fingers into the mat. And from here, we'll inhale to drop the belly, lift the chin, and exhale to hug that belly in toward the spine and allow the shoulders and the head to wrap forward. Inhaling to really pull the chest forward while you're pulling the belly straight down, tilting the pelvis. And then tilting the pelvis the other direction, lifting the belly toward the spine, and allowing the head to go down while the back arches. Inhaling to pull forward, and exhaling to arch in cat. Inhaling to cow, and exhaling into cat. Good. Come back to neutral, and then you can replace your elbows with your hands, putting your hands back underneath your shoulders. And we're going to come into a tabletop extension. If you've got a block, you can go ahead and place it underneath your right hand and then come up so that you're on your left fingertips. Then we're going to extend the right leg straight back and the left hand parallel with the ground. And if you'd like and you're feeling stable, you can lift that heel so that it becomes about parallel to the ground. And lifting your lower belly and keeping that right hip from opening to the right. So drop that right hip a little bit. And then pull the left fingertips and the right heel as far away from each other as possible. Keep that breath moving in and out through your nostrils. Good. Lower the hand and the foot, and then switch your block over to the left side and place your left hand on the block. Come up on your right fingertips, and then extend the left foot straight back. Right arm parallel with the ground, palm down. And if you'd like, you can lift the heel to as far up as parallel to the ground or lower than that if you'd like. And again, lifting that lower belly and keeping that left hip from coming up too much. Pulling that right fingertip and the left heel away from each other to create as long of a line between the heel and the extended hand as possible. Good. And lower. You can move the block off to the side. We're going to move through a couple tiger stretches. So again, making sure the wrists are under the shoulders. And we'll inhale to lift the right knee, bringing it as high as parallel to the ground or lower. That's fine too. And exhaling to bring it back down. Inhaling now to lift that left knee with the left leg bent at about a 90-degree angle, working to get that thigh parallel with the ground, and lowering. Inhale to lift the right, and exhale to lower. While you're doing these, try to keep the upper back as still as possible. Imagining, if you can, that you've got a glass of water on the middle of your upper back and you don't want it to fall. So even while we are switching the legs back and forth, trying to keep that upper back still and stable. Good. And we'll do one more on each side. Very nice. We're going to move into a series of planks now. And if you're pregnant, you want to stay on your knees. Otherwise, you have the option to stay on your knees or to lift your knees up. So we're going to go ahead, everybody, and walk your hands maybe about a foot or so forward and shift your weight forward so that your shoulders are over your wrists. Now you can stay here with the knees down, or if you'd like, you can come up onto your toes and lift the knees. If you're doing that, you're hugging the thighs up toward the ceiling, and pulling the chest forward, pressing into all 10 of your fingers. Lift up out of your shoulders, and your head stays in neutral. Continue to keep the breath flowing in and out through your nostrils, smoothly and deeply. If you need to rest at any point, please feel free to do so. We'll hold for about 3 more breaths. Very good. If you're up with your knees off the ground, you can go ahead and lower your knees. And we're going to move into a plank on the right side. So we're going to place the right hand underneath your nose, so in the center of your mat. And at first, keep your right knee on the ground. Turn to open your hips so that both hips are facing forward. You don't want them to come up or down or come forward or back. We're going to try to keep them stable forward. You can start with your left hand on your hip, and you can stay right here. If you are pregnant, this is your option for today. But if you'd like to move into a full side plank, you're welcome to extend that right foot and allow the left foot to stack on top. And if you're doing that, again, make sure that your hips are pointing straight forward and that your hips as much as possible are in an alignment so that you can have a nice line from your heels to the crown of your head. If you'd like to, for the last breath, you can extend that left arm straight up. Good. And come back to center. Go ahead and lower the knees if you had them raised. And then we're going to switch to open the hips to the other side. So bring the left hand underneath your nose and open to the right. Bringing that left heel straight back behind you. Extending the right foot out. Placing the right hand on the hips. And again, you can stay right here. If you're pregnant, stay right here. But if you'd like, everybody else, if you'd like to try to go into side plank with both feet, you're welcome to. You would extend the left leg straight and stack the right foot on top. Continue to breathe and keep the hips from sagging and make sure they're both pointing straight forward. For one last breath, if you'd like, you can extend that right arm straight up overhead. Good. And come back to center. Drop the knees for a moment. We're going to do 5 more breaths in plank. You have 3 options here. Knees down, knees up on your hands, or if you'd like, you can come down onto your forearms, placing those elbows where the wrists were. Bring the wrists straight out and head, or you can even interlace them together. The lower belly hugging in, thighs pressing up to the ceiling if you're working with straight legs. Two more breaths. Good. And lower the knees. And we'll take a brief child's pose, bringing the knees wide, big toe together, hinge back in the hips, allow your hands to walk forward. You can place a block under your forehead or your chest if you'd like. Just take a couple breaths here. After that strong work in those planks. Good. Then come back up into tabletop. If you've got that blanket underneath you, you can move it out of the way. We're going to tuck the toes, walk the hands forward, and begin to lift the hips up and back, coming in to downward facing dog. You can begin with the legs bent. So press into all 10 of the fingers. Make sure your pointer finger is pointing straight forward so your arms are slightly externally rotated. And hug those upper arms in towards your ears. And you take some deep breaths here. Maybe even exhaling out of your mouth a couple times. You can begin to pedal the feet a little bit. And for this last couple breaths in downward dog, you can try to work your legs towards straight, but only if that doesn't cause your spine to round. And then go ahead and walk your feet and your hands together in the center of your mat. Bring your weight forward so that your heels are slightly lighter than your toes. You shake your head yes and no. Release a little bit of tension that may have been held in your neck. And we're going to go ahead and come into a flat back. So bringing your hands either to your shins or to your thighs, we're going to bring the crown of the head forward to create as flat of a back as possible. The lower belly here is hugging up. Crown of the head is pulling forward, so again that chin comes in just a little bit. Slight micro bend in the knees, weight forward so that the toes are a little bit heavier than the heels. And then if this feels okay in your shoulders and you feel stable enough, you can let go of your legs and bring your arms straight out to the side while remaining in this flat back position. So again, remember to keep that micro bend in the knees, weight slightly forward, lower belly lifted, chin tucked in, and then pull those fingertips away from each other to create as long of a line between your fingertips as possible. Let's do 2 more breaths here. And bring your hands to your hips, bend your legs, and come up to stand. Very good. All right, we're going to come into mountain pose. So feet can be either together, big toes together and heels an inch or 2 apart, or feet can be shoulder width apart, or even wider if you'd like. Allow the weight to rest in the very center of your foot. And just like in a lot of these poses we've already done, shoulder blades are coming down the back, lower belly lifted, crown of the head is pulling up. And take a couple breaths. And we're going to begin to prepare to come in to chair pose. So in chair pose, we'll sit back, making the heels heavy rather than the toes. Arms will circle up, and then we'll look down to make sure that we can see our toes. So if you can't see your toes, that means your knees are too far forward and you need to bring your hips back, maybe even come up a little bit so that you can see your toes. It's good alignment for your knees. Hands can be straight up and in alignment with your spine, or hands can be on the hips. Let's take 3 more breaths in chair pose. And if you need to take a break, feel free. Toes are light, toes are not gripping the mat here. Heels should be heavy. And on your next exhale, press through the heels, bring the palms together to the center of your chest. Very good. We're going to do that again, and this time we're going to add a twist with the breath. So we will go ahead and bring the arms up overhead, sit back in the heels, and now we'll bring the hands straight out to the side like we did when we were in that flat back position. Now bring the palms so they're facing forward, and on each exhale we're going to twist to one side. Inhale, come back to center, exhale, twist to the other. Inhale, back to center, exhale, twist. So as your legs begin to fire up, really focus on your breathing, moving with the breath, exhaling on each twist, and inhaling back to center. One more each direction. Good. Bring your hands back up. Exhale, press through your heels and bring the hands together at your chest. Very good. All right, we're going to move forward to the front of your mat. If your knees are sensitive and you've got that folded blanket, set it back about the back third of your mat or so. You can always adjust it in a moment. It will support your knee. So we're going to bring the hands to the hips and put our feet like they're on a railroad track. And then go ahead and, keeping that railroad track alignment, step the left foot straight back. Keep the left hip forward and allow the left knee to drop to your blanket. Release the left toes. And we're going to come into a low lunge. So if you're pregnant, you're probably going to want to walk that right heel a little bit farther to the right. Otherwise, it can stay on that railroad track alignment. And we're going to lift the lower belly while we begin to drop the hips down toward the ground. And lifting that lower belly helps us press our tailbone toward the ground, helping to protect our lower back while we move deeply into the hips here. So hugging that left hip forward, right hip back, and then if you can, imagine that you're squeezing your inner thighs and your sides of your hips toward one another. And your hands, if you'd like, can come up, straight up, and even maybe slightly arching back, continuing to lift that lower belly. Even while you're sinking maybe a little bit deeper into the lunge. And one more breath here. Place your hands back on either side of your right foot. Tuck the left toe, lift the knee, bring the feet back together, and come back up to stand. Put your feet back into that railroad track alignment and set the right foot straight back. Drop that right knee to the ground, release the left toe, lift the lower belly so that your tailbone and your pelvis are all pointing in a direction that allows your tailbone to point toward the ground. And as you do so, sink into the low lunge. Now make sure here that your left knee is staying over your left ankle and not going past it. Compress through the top of your right foot to relieve a little bit of pressure on your knee. And then if you'd like, hands can come straight up and even have a slight back bend in that upper back. Lifting the lower belly as you sink deeply into the hips. And like before, imagine that you're pulling your inner thighs and the outside of your hips in toward one another. One more breath here. Lower your hands, tuck your toes, lift your knees, and step your feet together. Come up to stand. And you can move the blanket out of the way. And we're going to move into a crescent high lunge. So feet still on a railroad track. And this time, as we step the right foot straight back, we'll stay up off the ground. So you can adjust the alignment of your feet, either bringing them closer together or even spreading them farther apart so that you feel stable and so that you can again help tilt your pelvis in such a way that supports your lower back, lifting your lower belly. It might cause your left knee to bend a little bit. That's completely fine. We want to wrap this left hip forward so both hips are pointing forward. And then if you'd like and you have space in your shoulders, you can interlace your hands behind your back. Pull your hands down toward the ground, lifting your chest and lifting your chin, while you maybe sink a little bit deeper into that high lunge. Good. And come back up, release your hands, bring your hands to your hips, and step your feet back together. And we'll do that on the other side. We'll step the right foot straight back to come into a high lunge on the other side. So we're pulling the left hip so it's in alignment with the right, or the right hip forward so it's in line with the left. Make sure your left knee is over your left ankle, and then the tailbone is pointing toward the ground, which may cause a slight bend in that right leg. It's completely fine as long as you've got that good alignment for your spine. Continue to breathe. And then you can interlace your hand. Maybe place the other thumb on top this time, the thumb that will feel funny on top. And then pull your hands straight down toward the ground while you lift the chest and go a little deeper into the lunge. Continue to breathe. Keep that lower belly hugging in. One more breath. Release your hands, bring them to your hips, and step together. Very good. All right, if you've got a block, we're going to get ready to move into triangle pose. So you're going to place it on the right side of your mat behind your right foot. So we're going to bring the feet fairly wide apart, maybe not quite as wide as your hands are extended out, or even closer together if you'd like. So the left toes are slightly turned in so that your second toe is pointing forward. And we're going to go ahead and externally rotate the right foot so that the right toes are facing the right side of the mat. Now we're going to keep the hips and the shoulders both facing forward. And we're going to pull the fingers away from each other, hands parallel with the floor. And then hinging at the hip, so instead of bending at the side of the waist, we're going to bend at the hip. So it's almost like you're sliding that left hip back to the left while pulling your right arms or your right fingers straight to the right. Go as far as you can and then drop your hand to the block behind you. Now if you don't have a block, you can rest your hand on your inner thigh, your inner calf here. And then we'll bring the left arm straight up. And as you do so, imagine that you're opening your chest toward the ceiling. And you can keep a slight micro bend in this right leg. Press through both feet. Head can be in neutral or the head can be looking up or even down, whatever feels good on your neck. And you can either stay here or you can move with me into half moon. So if you're going to move with me, we're going to bend the right leg. You can bring your hand to your hip for a second. And we're going to shift the hip over the heel. Bring the block forward. And then we're going to open to the left. Very similar alignment to triangle, but with that left foot working to get toward parallel to the ground. And then you can straighten that left arm so that your shoulders and your hips are pointing straight forward. And take a couple breaths in half moon or in triangle. Good. Bring your hand back to your hip, bend that right foot, lift the block, straighten the right leg, and we'll go to the other side. So we'll turn the left toes in, so the second toe on your right foot is now facing forward. And adjust your feet, and now the left foot is going to externally rotate so that your left toes are now facing the short left side of your mat. Block can go behind your left foot. Start with your hands on your hips so you can make sure your hips and your shoulders are facing forward, and bring the arms parallel to the ground. Hinging at the hip rather than at the side. So you're going to pull that right hip back while bringing those left fingers as far as you can to the left, and then dropping your hand down to your leg. Anywhere along the inside of your leg is fine, or on the block behind your leg. Right arm goes straight up, and if you'd like, you can do that again where you are imagining you're opening your chest toward the ceiling. You're getting just a little bit of a twist too. This is a really great pose for a lot of muscles. And you have a slight micro bend in that left leg, and your head can be wherever is comfortable for your neck. Then you can either stay here or you can move into half moon on the other side, bending the left leg. Bring your hands to your hip first, your right hand to your right hip for a second. Walk that block out in front of your left foot. Shift your weight so your left hips are over your left foot, and then begin to float that right foot about parallel with the ground. Left knee can remain bent, or you can work it towards straight. Either one is fine. And then begin to float that right hand straight up overhead, or you can always leave it on your hip. That's it. You're welcome to stay in triangle for this pose. It's a very similar alignment to triangle pose. This side's a little bit less stable for me. Take a couple more breaths here. And then go ahead and bend the left leg. Lift the block. Straighten the left leg. And bring both toes forward. Very good. All right, set the block not too far from your mat. We are going to use it a little bit on the ground. And come up to the front of the mat. We're going to do half of the sun salutation to get us to the ground. So feet shoulder width apart. Inhale, we'll sweep the arms straight up, and exhale, we'll fold forward. Inhale, we'll come into that flat back with your hands on your legs, and exhale, bring your hands to the ground and step back. If you're pregnant, go ahead and press into downward facing dog. Everyone else, you can drop your knees or keep them up. Hug the elbows straight back to lower all the way to the ground. Inhale to peel your chest up off the mat, and exhale to lower. You're going to press back through tabletop, lifting your hips up and back into downward facing dog. We'll take just a couple breaths here. Downward dog, like triangle, is a great pose for many, many parts of your body, and it's stabilizing. So we'll take a couple breaths here. Again, maybe shake your head yes and no. And then we'll bring the knees to the ground. And bring your heels out to the side and turn to face in front. And we're going to bring the left knee in to your inner thigh and the right leg straight out to the side. Good. On this stretch that we're going to do, your right leg can be bent. It can be so bent that your foot is flat or straight or anywhere in between. But we're going to keep the hips and the shoulders facing forward while we do this stretch. So we're going to lift the left arm and bend through that left side to reach towards your toes. And you may not get very far, and that's completely fine. If you can reach, you might just be doing a little side stretch, sitting up. That's completely fine too. We're working to really get a stretch through the left side of the body and also a stretch through that right hamstring. Even just a little bit of a twist since we're keeping the chest open. Good. And come back up to neutral and switch sides. So we're bringing the right leg in, left leg out. And again, this foot can be bent, and then we can work toward stretching that side with the leg bent. It can be straight or it can be anywhere in between. Try to keep both sitting bones glued to the ground, hips and shoulders facing forward, and go ahead and stretch to the left, getting a nice stretch through the right side of your body. Whatever your left leg is doing, we're getting a nice stretch through the right side, and if your leg is working towards straight, we're getting a nice stretch in the hamstring. Good. And come back up to neutral. Now we're going to bring both feet out into straddle pose. And here, just like before, legs can be bent. If you've got your block, you can bring it out in front of you. And if you've got the space, you can bring your chest forward so that your forehead rests on the block. And your legs can be here bent or straight. They can be as wide as you'd like. And the block can be at any height that works for you. Try to retain some length through the spine. A little bit of rounding here is okay, but we don't want to be really, really rounded here. So try to keep some length through the spine. That might mean you need to be higher up, or maybe even resting your shoulders, or your elbows and forearms on the block is another option. So we'll take a few more breaths in this straddle stretch. Keep those breaths as smooth and steady as you can. This is a good pose to reconnect with that breath. Good. Put your palms on the ground and press yourself slowly back up to a seated position. And we're going to work our way onto the ground on our back with our knees bent. And we're going to do bridge pose. So you have two options here with the block and one without. Without the block, we're going to press through the bottoms of the feet, lifting the hips. You're going to press through your forearms and the sides of your fingers, or you can interlace your hands behind your back, bringing your shoulders together and pressing through your shoulders and your forearms. If you'd like to put a block underneath your sacrum, supporting your pelvis and below your lower back, you're welcome to do that and sit in a supported bridge pose. Or if you'd like, you can put the block between your knees, squeezing your knees together. And as you do so, imagine that you're dropping your inner thighs rolling them down toward the ground, which allows your glutes to relax. And that's important in this pose, that it's not your glutes that are doing all of the work. You really want to be pressing through your shoulders, through your forearms, through your feet, and then allowing that internal rotation of your thighs to relax your glutes so that they don't take over and do most of the work here. And wherever you are, let's do 2 more breaths. And then very, very slowly allow your hips to come back to the ground. Remove the block if it's underneath your pelvis. And set the block off to the side. Then gently hug your knees in toward your chest. You can make some gentle circles with your knees. Making sure to circle in both directions. And then we'll set up for our Shavasana, our resting pose, where we'll start off with a breathing exercise and then we'll end with a few minutes of quiet. So you can either drop your feet to the ground with your legs bent. It's a good option for any sensation in your lower back. You can also roll up your blanket and stick it underneath straight legs, which allows a little bit of a bend in your knees, which can also feel good on your lower back. Or if you're pregnant, find a comfortable position on your left side. If you're lying on your back, one hand can be on your belly and the other can be at your chest. If you're comfortable doing so, you can close your eyes. And you're going to spend a couple minutes doing the 3-part breath. So for the 3-part breath, we inhale in 3 parts. The first part of the inhale, we inhale into our bellies. And the hand that's on the belly can feel the belly rise with the first part of the inhale. In the second part of the inhale, we feel our rib cage rise. And on the third part of the inhale, we feel that heart center, where the other hand is, rise. And then the exhale goes down in reverse. Heart center falls, rib cage falls, belly falls. So we inhale through the belly, and then the rib cage, and then the heart center, and then we exhale, lowering the heart center, and then the rib cage, and then the belly. Inhaling again, breathing into the belly, then into the rib cage, then into the heart center, and we exhale, lowering the heart center first, then the rib cage, and then the belly. Inhaling, allowing your stomach to rise, and then the rib cage, and last your heart center. Exhaling to do that in reverse, heart center, ribs, and belly. And do one more on your own. And for these last few minutes, you can stay with the 3-part breath. That's a nice option if your mind tends to go crazy during stillness, because that 3-part breath takes a little bit of concentration and it can be a little bit more difficult for your mind to wander. Or you can allow your breath to resume a more natural breathing rhythm, allowing your body, your breath, and perhaps even your mind to come to a place of stillness. And don't forget, that comes with practice. Your mind may not be still at all today, and that is completely fine. We're just setting ourselves up so that one day, with practice, we can find that place of stillness. And even when we get that stillness more regularly, there'll still be days when the mind is busy and wandering. We continue to practice, knowing that our efforts produce fruit over time in the long run. And so we keep showing up. So just take a couple minutes now to simply be in whatever way you know to be best for you today. I invite you now to stay here for several more minutes if you've got the time. Otherwise, if you're ready, you can allow some gentle movements in your hands and your feet. And slowly open your eyes. Bring one knee and then the other into your chest. And then allow yourself to roll onto one side and use your hands to help you move slowly to come back up into a comfortable seated position. Well, thank you so much for joining me at the beginning of this new week and this new month. I hope you had a good practice and I hope you have a good week. And even if you don't, I hope you remember to be kind to yourself. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to practicing with you again soon.